Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. We're gonna begin part two of the talk on Tom Paladine. Paladine. But the problem is this guy's been around for a long time, and I think it's important that people know. And there's a whole what this guy was doing, etc. And like anything else, as I said, you just can't do what he said he was doing, curing all these things. You don't have a right to do that. And what he was doing was using a classic Hieronymus machine. He shows it right online. I believe it's a two bank, meaning there's two dials from 0 to 100. And that's what he was doing. And he's been doing this for, could it be 10 years? So the whole idea is that he built up a lot of people that through the placebo effect used his services and maybe have liked it. I don't know ultimately what that's all about. And again, because he's been out there banging the drum, he's gotten a lot of the typical New Age, easily fantasized people, and particularly the Christian community who back all the failures to get on his train, apparently. So what he ever did or not did, I doubt if he kept any kind of records. Also, he has online here, and you'll see in our thumbnail, that he had not only used a regular Hieronymus machine, but he had some sort of other machine attached to that. He also was using two Tesla coils, and he did the usual Tesla coil. You know, it's like low-grade stage theatrical magic, where they trick you with a card or a hand thing. So he had two Tesla coils there, and he was holding up fluorescent tubes next to them. And this is the old classic thing showing that there's something happening there. And I don't know if he was trying to make himself look fancy or not, but the whole idea is Tesla coils put out these electrical frequencies, and they will then disturb the energies in vacuum and fluorescent tubes, which then makes them light up. This is the oldest trick in the book. And of course, he was doing that because he was pretty much low level. That's a pretty low level thing to do. I don't know if he thinks people are impressed by that. But he had two Tesla coils that fed through this semi-elaborate system, which appeared to be some sort of tubes. Now, in most of his interviews, he didn't really state that he knew anything about the process, that he just bought this Hieronymus machine and was doing it and offering these services, which he's been doing for quite some time. If you look at his setup, it's kind of a silly little setup. I'm not sure if he thinks the tubes that he had, which are pretty large tubes, if these were some sort of amplifiers or not. I'm assuming some of this process went. And of course, Tesla coils put out a huge frequency range. They're going through all these frequencies, and he was feeding those into the machine again. He was feeding it through these other things and then going back into the machine, etc. So it's an interesting little setup, although highly primitive, and it doesn't really look like he knew what he was doing there when we look at the actual setup he had there. But it is interesting. Now, this is something fairly new, and I'm sure he copied it from me. He started using these very large tubes. In the past, he was just stating that he was using this classical Hieronymus machine and using these reverse information. When you look on his website today, he has these very large tubes, very large, that have copper coils in them, etc. Now, this isn't classical to resonance factors either. But it is interesting, and I'm not sure what his tubes do. From what I can tell, these are not classical tubes whatsoever. He has coils wrapped in them, seems to be made by himself. So I'm not sure what's exactly going on there, period. So he has his interpretation of what a tube is, and he has several other things there. It doesn't seem like they are very, I'm assuming these are amplification tubes that he has there. This is very non-traditional, and we just don't know what he had in mind there. So there's lots of copper coils in these tubes, which apparently, as he said, is something that he made. That's not normal tubes as we're familiar with. So they're not in any way whatsoever. He is using a two-bank unit. To clarify that again, there's two 0 to 100 dials on the machine he's using, which may be a Jenkin machine or maybe a machine he got from somewhere else. It's hard to say. They all look the same. I can't really make out the printing on the machine. But Hieronymus machines, when you look at them, are pretty bad inside, and they're very primitively made. There's nothing special to them either. It's again, some people used to say that he was using a prism in them, and this was something, and that's the reason. And I heard from a person who claimed to have worked with Hieronymus that the prism thing was just a con to put in there to get a patent, to make something, to come up with a concept. I tend to believe that because I can't believe that prism energy and how that's going to reflect light is something special. He used that as kind of a ruse to get a patent on his machine, whatever that is. And he used it to identify, I forget what the patent term was for. But he was able to get that through, etc. So that's the machine he's using. And apparently he is connecting 2 Tesla coils. Now, Tesla coils are very strong and put out a whole bunch of multi-frequency energies out. Now, he's got these multi-frequency energies going from the Tesla coils, 2 of them, through this machine, through these tubes and other things that he has in there. There's a multitude of other parts in there as well, other than these odd tubes he has in there, which only seem to be, I believe those are, we call those amplification tubes, because what he's got is wound wires. And that, of course, is what amplifiers do and why they tend to be so heavy, because they have all these wound wires in them. He's done it through this tube reality, so he's amplifying. But you got to remember that Tesla coils are putting out a wide range of frequencies, not just one. So, and they're very strong, and usually when you combine them into a radionic unit, and the way that he's doing it is that you're blowing the energy out. It's too strong. So you want to be more, have something that's tuned in properly. And that's exactly, he's got all these things in it, which is, as I said, pretty confusing. Now, Paladino was based out of Florida, and he shows his setup online on his website and everything else. A very crude, unprofessional setup, very crudely done. Got it on shelves like, yeah, this is some high school experiment. Very poorly done for someone who's making a fortune every month from using what appears to be one machine on top of it. He doesn't seem to have banks of machines. He's putting everybody in one machine and using that and broadcasting to them. So he puts the individual photograph in there with the individual problem. And I'm assuming these are stacked throughout the entire machine, which is what it showed there in the back. Now, I had a machine exactly like that where you'd put all this stuff in the back. And it's a big, obnoxious machine, but you could potentially put hundreds of people in there. And if you can mix them all together. Now, I guess to a degree you can do that. I'm not really sure what his reality that was. I don't think he knows anything about the whole process in the bigger picture. He's learned very primitive stuff. I think he claims he even talked to Hieronymus's wife for a period of time, or met her. Must have been many years ago, but she was alive for quite some many years after her husband died. And the problem is she knew nothing about the business, and as such, she never had any money, and there's been all sorts of talk of how she was unable to survive or make a living, and how she tricked a lot of people to get money. I don't know how true any of this stuff is in terms of that, but it makes sense. That's one of the problems that happens with people in organizations, and particularly wives, that are not interested in what's happening with the people doing it. So if something happens to them, they're fat out of luck. But this is the reality that's happening. That's all it is. And as I said, you can pretty much see it online to what he was doing. And I may put a link underneath or not. I'm not sure how important that is. But as I said, he's using a traditional unit, which is the usual setup, which is pretty much a bunch of nothing. I'm not sure what the kind of inside the actual Hieronymus unit. Usually there's a pretty primitive amplifier, and that was inside of that. But we'll have to see what that's all about. But he's using a regular modern type radionic Hieronymus machine. But he's feeding in 2 Tesla coils, and he has these tubes and transformers that he has in this mixture together in what looks to be a very unprofessional kind of, I don't know, grade school setup of electronics. So, you can see how this guy's mind is and how primitive it is and how he lacks understanding. This, again, feeds into the machine. And that's, of course, what was going on. Now, as I said, what you're feeding in here, you're trying to amplify, I'm assuming, and you're moving in a lot of different frequencies when you're using Tesla coils. And in general, Tesla coils are just too strong to use with units. You're blowing all the other energies out of it. So you want to stay away from Tesla coils in general to feed into units. You may be able to use Tesla coils if you want to feed them out of units, meaning it's a way of sending the energy into the atmosphere. But traditionally, you want to do like anybody who sends a signal, whether that's a scalar signal or an electromagnetic signal, because you're using the electromagnet as a piggyback for the scalar to some degree. So you want to use more of a traditional amplifier, and you want to use traditional transmitters like I do. That's, of course, how you get results. And there are very good equipment available now. And the other thing is that you need to transmute that equipment by at a subatomic level so that the scalar energies can flow through it. And so the tubes can grab the scalar energy and use it the way you want it. And of course, that's what I've done and have my new models, which are coming out very soon, how they work. And you can see right here of a real amplifier, which has 7 tubes. And this is clearing the unit out of all the electric conflicts at basically a subatomic level, or a very low level of actually how the machine works, so that the scalar energies can flow through it and be amplified properly. And then, of course, they go out to a transmitter that then transmits it's out. And there's a few other components here that we are not showing you right now that are part of the bigger system, but this is what you do. Now, he's just got a standard Hieronymus type machine there, which is still basically, it's just a 0 to 100 dials, but basically it's a roof drown type machine with a little bit of electronics built into it. Now, roof drowns machines, as general, the ones that she sold mostly, were all non-electric, psychic-based intention machines. What we have here is Hieronymus, of course, did use some electronics and did use some amplification through it, but all of that was pretty low level. We understand now that we have to use scalar waves through very powerful amplifiers. This is a 200-watt amplifier that you're seeing there. But regular amplifiers in their self don't work. You have to transmute the electronics. You have to get them to a level that they can grab the scalar waves, amplify them, and then they can be, again, transmitted out with a proper, powerful, high-quality transmitter. So that's the process with the proper in and out and so on. So that's just to simplify. But basically, that's what he was doing. And as I said, I'll probably put a little link down below here that you can look at his site that shows you his equipment setup. He certainly wasn't hiding it, and he wasn't hiding what he was doing. He's been talking about this for many, many years. I think I saw him 5, 8, 10 years, I'm not sure, talking about the process and what he did. And of course, he never used the term, but I said, well, all you're doing, you're doing radionics. And of course, that's right. And then he started to admit the fact that he was using an Hieronymus machine, which is basically a radionic machine. It's as simple as that. There's nothing, it's all based on that same principle. And it's as simple as that. And of course, for some reason or another, he's been getting away with it. I don't know if people like him or it's the crowd of people that he gets. And because he praises Jesus all the time, that they haven't reported him to the authorities. But most of this stuff is pretty horrendous, the claims that he's making, which he shouldn't make. There are lots of people that make claims, as I said, Spooky 2, the Life Patch people, another goofball Christian who likes to milk, apparently, the ignorant, buffoonish Christians who believe in anything if Jesus' name is put on it. Is one of the problems. He goes into, he thinks he's Iron Man, and he thinks that the Bible numbers in the Bible, which were made up, that was never in the original text, are somehow they're Bible codes. And I've heard this for years, because after all, you can't go on by what the Bible says, because it's such a bunch of gobbledygook nonsense that you have to give it a code. It's so ridiculous. But this is what the life patch people, they have these patches Suzanne Summers, they roped into that, who died of cancer. And this is the problem we run into this. Here's a guy that has died. So how can we give him any kind of validity? We have the same thing with several orgone practitioners. And we're not talking orgonite. These are people that followed Wilhelm Reich that died from illnesses. What is going on here? So the minute these people die, and they're dying young, and they're not able to do anything to sustain their body energy. And here we have yet another one. Now, the average life expectancy of basically a fat, overweight, stupid American is about 77 years old now. In general, people are in better medical and food places around the world. The average people are living to be 86 to 90 easily. So the whole idea is these people who claim to have the answers to everything are using this great technology that they're curing everything, and he makes all these claims, which is again illegal, is the fact that they aren't able to take care of themselves. This is the same problem we have with the stooge who writes all the books on radionics, called Peter Ranetti. And his books are even translated in many languages. I believe he's a disinformation agent. He is hooked up to the government, and he wants to destroy this field entirely. And he seems to have very sympathetic opinions about Satanists and everyone else, even though he claims he's a Christian. Ha ha. But he's as sick as a dog. He has all sorts of diseases, yet he claims that his technology and the rates that are out there cure everything. I mean, this is just the height of hypocrisy, and it's really stupidity that you're sick and then you tell everybody, well, it cures everything except everything I have. What? So the whole idea is this is nonsense. And here we go with another guy who's claiming to cure everything, but he can't cure himself. We have several orgone people who have died of diseases, one of cancer recently, that is working in that field. I mean, what do we have to say? And there is a history in radionics of people dying young from all sorts of diseases. Very few have lived long. Now, only Hieronymus has lived long. I don't know of any other practitioners of radionics that have lived long other than Hieronymus. Most of them die in their middle to late 60s, and they all have. It's pretty upsetting and bizarre. And the one reason for this is the fact that radionics has a kickback. The energies come back through the units, and the units leak energy. This is notorious in certain units, particularly any orgone, which is toxic to begin with and comes back on you. But this has been highly noted about the SE5 by several people I know that own them, that the energy leaks out of them and there's problems. These units do not work properly. They're electronic garbage. They're just chip machines that run numbers. The point is that you're getting that energy back, and that unit is not properly sealed, and the energies are not contained in that lump of garbage. And we'll be showing you the internal guts of that in other videos. I mean, this is really bad engineering, and of course, that's another joke unit like all of them. You know, we need to go to the next level, which I have produced, and we need to make sure that the energies are contained and projected out properly so that these subtle energies, or actually force field type energies. When you use, I hate to use the term subtle because it makes it sound like they're weak when they're not. These are energies of creation. They are extremely powerful, and we have to understand that. So they really are a very unique type of energy that you have to use. And if you're not using these energies correctly through the proper transmutated electronics, it's just a psychic process. They're just psychic focusers, and that's all they are. And people would unplug their Hieronymus machines and say they got the same results because they were using psychic focusing. Now, psychic focusing can be very potent. So it does work, but it's really kind of silly. Do we want to keep everything on this very low psychic level? And psychic energies are very weak with almost everyone. Very few people have any kind of strong psychic powers, nor can sustain that past a couple of minutes. So what you want to do is have machine assistance, but you have to have a transmutated machine. And they don't have silly little tubes like this guy has, big giant things with coils in them. That's kind of you can just see the kind of primitiveness of his understanding of these energies. You need to have sophisticated tube systems and use a lot of them. Similar as you see here, 7 tubes with this is 8. You've got a preamp built into this where the tubes pick up different frequencies. I mean, this is a complicated process, and these are excellent tools that are readily affordable in most cases. So you can get pretty high quality electronics now at very fair prices. But you got to know which ones to use, and it's not the electronics alone. You have to transmute them. You have to change them to some atomic level. And that's what's done through either discs like this that are activator discs. They have different numbers on it. That's not one of them. But the whole idea is these then go on top or under units that transmutate them from the outside in. And then, of course, the next step is to transmute it from the inside out. So you use a USB or an optic cable to go in. This is tech, people. Not some goofy little wire together by some disturbed Satanist sex deviates that all of these people are, the Charles Casimatos and all these other people, the orgone units, or should I call them the come in your pants unit, that have such great power. All these people are afflicted by illnesses and die young, and they all seem to get horrible problems, as all of these kind of nut jobs, from Terence McKenna, who got basically brain cancer, Timothy Leary, who I believe had some sort of liver cancer, and we can go on with these people that use hallucinogens and think something is happening. And then we go into all the quote, old radionic practitioners who never did well. Apparently, Ruth Drown died from strokes. She had 2 or 3 strokes just before she was going to go to court, ironically or strangely, or were they induced by herself, where she actually died from strokes. Something that, so here we go again. Then we have all the orgone people who are getting all sorts of diseases as well. So here we go again, and they seem to be unable to do anything about it. And now we have the same thing with old Tommy Boy here, who claims so much and who's curing everybody of everything except himself. And the organization is so disingenuous. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue doing this or not. They don't need him as long as that machine is working. The reality of it is that they could continue to do this process. So we'll have to see how that goes. And if they continue to do that with his machines there or not. I mean, they could. All they need is a photograph, and I don't know, it's not very technical, but most likely, as is the case with most people who are involved in stuff like this, most likely his wife, and I don't think they don't mention kids or anything else. He was married, but I frankly doubt his wife has any idea what's going on, period. I mean, there just doesn't seem to be much of an interest. It's really sad that your family, or particularly your wife, has no interest in what takes care of her. So this is very typical about everyone. I don't know anybody who has family that is interested in what they're doing. It's kind of bizarre. They are interested in the check, though, and the money that they can live off of you. So the whole idea is these are all the things that go with it. So nothing is being taught here. As I said, his setup, which is shown right on there, is almost comical and done very cheaply. I mean, he's got primitive shelves. He's got it stuck in a garage somewhere. Nothing is painted or taken care of properly. All of his wiring and everything else is kind of crude. And then he's doing the oldest, stupidest, moronic trick in the book, is that you get 2 fluorescent tubes and you hold them near the Tesla coil, because Tesla puts out an electromagnetic frequency that stimulates powder or gases in those tubes, those fluorescent tubes, and they light up without being plugged in. So he's insinuating that he's some sort of genius with this. This is a electrical fact that's been done for 100 years, ever since Tesla coils were available to the public. So these are all the things we're looking at. I don't really have much to think of with Paladin. I don't really, he didn't sound too bright. He didn't sound like he really knew what he's talking about. but he certainly pushed his message out to a lot of people. He would work on you for 15 days for free, and that was just a way to kind of get you involved. What they tell you after that, from what I've gotten from other people who went through the system, is, well, you need to get the service to really prove how well it is. But you're never going to feel anything. And in general, anybody who is normal is going to say that they get something and they are going to believe it's working for them. Why would you? Why would you do something? This don't work. It's garbage. So I used to get this all the time when I would get regular medications. I would go in there and wanting it to work, I would take the medication for a few days. Gee, it seems like it's working. And then, of course, a week or so later, it didn't work because it was just a placebo effect. And you got to remember, you're going to get a placebo effect with probably 35% of the people you work with. One type of placebo effect or not. So if you're working with a lot of people, that's a lot of people that say your stuff works. And it has to do with long term. Are we tracking any of these people? He's dealing with a lot of metaphysical energies. And the bottom line is you do have to remove all the clogs in your energetic fields if you expect other things to kick in that are more, quote, physically, unquote, based. So if you're not removing the blockages, taking out the crossed or negative conditions, these things could be anything from toxic energies to, quote, type of curses, unquote. There's all sorts of negative energy that can be stuck in your energetic field. And this is pretty much what I work on and have been doing for years. And when these are removed, miracles happen in people's lives. But the point is that I would like to see his data. He claims that he had medical proof of curing somebody from a venereal herpes. And he had proof of that. Well, I don't know what that proof is or not, but, it can't be proved by him and whoever contacted him. It has to be done by a third party to look into that. That's proper. You can't verify your own results. This is what the unamazing Randy did, is that he was going to give out the money. He was the one that was going to make sure that these things were working or not. He was going to say whether it worked, and he was going to control. You don't do that. A third party has to watch over the test, has to administer the test, and has to then verify whether it was successful or not. So when somebody does it and they claim results from it, and not a third impartial party, then it's not proper science. And we have to do this right. Plain and simple. So we don't know what it is, and since a lot of the population, particularly that go to alternative services, are well-meaning but fairly mentally disturbed people. So the whole idea is you're going to get people that believe in everything happening to them, and I get these cases all the time, and I'm really not sure what to make of it. But a lot of it, whether it is induced or not, these people have mentally ill problems. Now, where does it come from? We don't know. Did the mental illness cause the reactions, or did the outside cause the mental illness? We don't know. And so you're going to always get a certain amount of people that feel better, get good results, etc. And that's just from the process of working with people. So this is something that we all have to understand as well. So, but here we get down to the brass tacks of things. This guy is 64 years old. In this day and age, that's almost young. You should be able to, and again, life expectancy, even with the fat, stupid Americans that live on garbage, all literally garbage, sucking down seed oils and carbs and huge amounts of fat and sugar, live to be on average 78 years old. And most people who take a little bit of care of themselves are easily going into their mid-80s. Now, this guy with the miracle machine couldn't make it past 64, and they're lying to you what he died of. He may have died, he probably, from what I can tell, is that he died from a heart attack. It doesn't seem to be that he died from cancer or other things, but I may or may not look into that. I haven't had time to do any scans on him. But from my spidey senses, it tells me this was a heart attack or a stroke. So whatever it is, it wasn't working on him, and he's another person. He wasn't overly fat or anything else if the photographs online are relatively recent. But this, again, is the same old story. And what are we to make of it? There was another person for years who talked about the immortality of the Essenes. Basically, they were a Christian faction, but really they were a Jewish group I think they were Christian now. who claimed they lived and they had all these practices. And the person who did that work, who claimed that these could create long life, died young. Oh, let's follow that system. I want to live long. Let's follow the one that the guy who preached it died young. So let's follow this system that died. Let's use orgone because it's so great. Well, everybody that uses orgone seems to die young. Orgone in general, even if it's not a perverted orgonite by the Satanist Carl Weltz, who is now dead as well, they're all dead. They don't live even getting close to 80, which should be easy. And they certainly should be able to live into their 90s if they have the miracle machines. They're not. And these people, from what I could tell, including Tommy Boy here, were all generally fairly healthy. So was Wells. So was everyone else that I've noted. They were fairly healthy. Unlike myself, who've been sick all my life, and basically, since I'm using my technology, I've never been healthier. But I've been sick all my life, spending an average of 3 months in bed since childhood with horrible lung infections from horrible allergies, which would then infect my lungs. And this has been going on all my life until I used my machines and, of course, my special herbal combinations to knock this stuff out. So I've never been healthier now that I'm pushing 70 myself than I've ever been in my life. But, I've been sick all my life. The fact is that I have certain problems or things that, well, this is kind of normal. These people don't have that. They also are rolling in the dough, and they spend all their time monkeying with this stuff. But we certainly can almost confirm 100% that anything to do with orgone, which is not what Tom was doing, is dangerous and toxic. Stay away from it, particularly if it's orgonite, which is poison. So it's as simple as that. So you've been warned, and those idiots that want to hold on to these machines because you spent a few $1,000s. Well, how much does a funeral cost? 5, 10? Well, that's what you're looking into. How nice. Thank you, Carl, baby. So the whole idea is that all that happened. Now, Tom is another. This is pathetic. And it has to do with all these alternative people. The same thing with Peter Moscow, who's a big healer using radionics and everything else that, again, died young. They all die young, and there's no reason to it because these people are so-called healers. They're frauds. They're all frauds, and they don't know what they're doing. And at the very least, their technology is highly faulty because we have proof of it. If these great orgonite machines, which were claimed to be the great healers and booster of energy, that all the athletes and everybody else are using this and becoming superstars, yeah, when they're dead, they're superstars in the coffin, in your mind, in hell. So the whole idea is that's what you're talking about here. So the bottom line is that we have to be careful. And, all of life is a fraud. Not only are all the alternative people frauds, cowards, liars, and demons, basically, they just suck the life out of you, but everybody else they are no different than and even worse than your common institutions that are failures in lives that you support. So certainly there is no help from the other side either, who drain every penny from you, which is the great rewards you get for fighting for your country and working hard all your life and trying to build up, where they take every penny from you through the medical industry and leave you dead. That's what they do. Or if you're a threat, as many surgeons and doctors do, is they will murder you on the operating table. So this is the bottom line that goes on. So it's a very sick, evil world we live in. And it can be changed if people support good people like me and this organization. Massive change will happen, and people will get the type of tech that they need. If you support these losers that die young and give you poisons, who openly admit that they're Satanists, well, you get what you deserve. And of course, that's what people do. And they're legion. And everybody's bought off for a very small amount of money. Just the way it is. But again, I don't think Tom had any power. I don't believe anything he did. I don't believe he had any kind of success. He probably had that, I would say he probably had somewhere from 15 to 30% of success with the placebo. a lot of stuff can't be measured in what you tell people, as these con artists do. And well, wait, you'll see. Well, how do you judge whether your aura is fixed? How do you know it? Well, first of all, it does take time to restore your body energies. How do you prove any of that stuff? How do you prove anything else unless you're going after a very specific health condition where you can note whether you have improvements or not? And this is what I wanted to test him with, but I guess that's another one bites the dust. Another one goes and another one bites the dust. Well, they're all biting the dust. And are we sad? And does it matter? Not really. They're just other delusional fools on the path of self-destruction, supporting an evil, horrible society, living in a fantasy world, believing in comic book gods and comic book realities. And in the end, what does that get you? Failure and death. But after all, you invited it in, didn't you? Until next time.